my parents were born in Aiken, South Carolina, and my they came from different backgrounds. My father was one of 17 children.
Oh my lord.
Yes, and
Same one mother,
one
17.
mother, 17 children. And growing up, I had 12 uncles and aunts that were living in the area, actually. Um, and my,
You did.
yes,
So you grew up in also. You were born there.
no,
And
no, they migrated to Hempstead. Many of them are in this area,
okay.
Amityville,
So let's
Hempstead.
hear that story in a minute. But tell me more. So about your mom and your dad.
Okay. My mother, she came from a household that was quite different. It was four of them, and very strict household in terms of, her dad was rather peculiar individual when you think back on it. He was very strict, and they were very fearful. He had a lot of land and livestock, and they should have ended up wealthy.
Hmm.
But because he was very to himself and isolated himself, he ended up losing all of his land. And no one ended up with anything. And very, very private person. And my mother, I can just see her now, being very formal with him, and it was very, 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 very interesting. And I guess she must have made up her mind that she was going to be a real warm, loving mother, because that's the kind of mother she was.
Hmm.
She was very different, and each of her siblings quite different. She had one sibling that, after childbirth, she had a mental breakdown, so I really never had a close relationship with her. She had another sister who was very, very gorgeous and kind of flamboyant.
Mm-hmm.
And she had a brother that seemed to be very, very bothered by the way he was raised, and grew up with some issues. A nice man, but never reached his potential. Just really the kind of product that comes about as someone dominating their lives. So that's the kind of family my mother had. My dad, no, there were 17 children, and it seems like my grandmother was like a Cherokee Indian,
Hmm.
gorgeous, 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 and she was a storyteller, and she was um, this person that could cook and take care of this huge family. So while they weren't dirt poor, they managed. They never there were never stories about they had the highest regard for her. I mean, there was no one better than my grandmother, according to them. However, she didn't have these warm feelings necessarily for my father. He was kind of like the black sheep of the family. Although he never complained, he never got the kind of attention that his siblings got, and consequently, that was passed on to us. So we were just like dying for this attention from this his grandmother, because she was, in our lives when we grew up in Hempstead. Because when she migrated to Hempstead, she never owned a home. She lived with her children, and by then her husband was deceased. So she was comfortable spending maybe a year here or 6 months here, and then she pack up and she'd go to someone another person's home. She spent a little time with us, but what I remember is I really thought I was really fascinated by her storytelling, and also she was just this she looked like a little Indian woman. She had that kind of body with this hair down to here, hair
And down to your waist.
down to her waist, and she she was a character. She'd tell these stories, and she'd have this straight face. She'd have everyone cracking up, and I just wanted a little more of that. And she just never. She seemed to have greater love for my father's sisters and brothers, his children, and them more so than my father. And we just came to just kind of accept that.
Interesting. Do you remember any of her stories?
Let's see. I'll probably have to come back to one because nothing comes to mind.
What kinds of stories would she tell?
Oh, she would tell you stories about people in her life, not necessarily her children, but people in her life, and she would just always, it would always be a long story, and it would always have this clever ending and something that would kind of shock you, and she'd sit back and she'd wait for this reaction, and she just knew how to really really captivate us. And the stories didn't have to necessarily be true. I'm trying to think. She was never considered dishonest, but if she told a story and it wasn't exactly true, it was just like, that's one of Mama's stories, So it was just like accepted, And her children adored her. Her children adored her. Like she had her not youngest son, but her next to youngest son, who was the only one of the 17 children that's still living. Tommy Bates. He's in his 80s. He still lives in Hempstead. But anyway, he used to really, really just, his mother was the beginning and the end in his life. And also she had a very close relationship with, she had all of her kids were really, really very, very good looking. And in fact, I have a picture with the boys and the girls. And she would and she would visit these girls. They lived in Amityville, and they just would sit around, drink coffee. She smoked cigarettes, and she cooked when she felt like it. But she was treated pretty much like a little prima donna. And she, you just wanted to hear her tell these stories. That was a big thing with her.
Sounds good. Right. They talk a lot about birth order. But with 17 children, it'd be a very complex theory to spin out.
Very early on, we moved to Hickory Street, and this house we live in is 5 stories, wooden staircase, and we're living on, I'm trying to think I'm not sure if it was the 4th or the 5th floor. And it's a tenement, and the rooms go straight back. And the bathroom is attached on the outside. So when you go into the house, when you go into this apartment, you'd have to go out and on a old iron kind of porch, and the bathroom was in the corner. And it was really scary. It was really scary.
So there were 5 stories and a different family in each story, and everyone shared.
It was more than five families. It was on the floor that we lived on. It was another family that lived opposite us, an Italian family.
Okay.
And they cooked. I hate garlic to this day because they cook. I really like it, but if I smell it, and if it's they cook with so much garlic, we couldn't even walk out of our door. It was just like incredible.
Give the demons.
And they never spoke. They never once spoke. And if they did speak, it was in Italian. We didn't understand them. But
so wait, this is okay. So there are about 2 units on each floor, so maybe 10 families, and everyone shared that one bathroom?
No. There was a bathroom on their side for them. We had our bathroom on our side. There's probably every family. I don't know this.
Right.
Oh, there was. I tell you what, there is a tenement in that place that had an indoor bathroom, because when I became superintendent in Orange, I ran into one of my teachers that had relatives that lived in the same area, and we talked about it. And she knew the place I lived. It was just amazing. Yeah, but they had the evening group coming and going. We had kids coming and going and families, whereas they just it just seemed like, a household that we just never thought about. We there was a kid that lived there at one time. His mother probably rented a room, and he was living there, and we remained friends until his death. He actually um, went from that house to his mom moving him to the other side of town, and he became a police officer, and really really important. He was a year younger than myself, and went to Hempstead High School, and became a big figure in Atlanta, Georgia, when people he kind of like recruited a lot of people, and a lot of people moved from Hempstead to Atlanta. It was because of Charles Blunt,
Mm.
So but he did live next door for a while.
He lived in that house.
He lived in the
He was
house.
as a whole different family by that time.
No,
Or
he was a tenant in that house. I can't even remember the timeline, but I remember him being a tenant. His mom was a single mother, and they just kind of like, I don't know if they had one room, two rooms, but they were tenants in that household.
I see.
Yeah.
And the rest of the block or the surrounding 2 or 3 blocks were pretty integrated. I mean, or was it rare in the mid '50s and early '60s for there to be black families in that area?
Okay, the white people started moving out. When we moved in, the Capel stayed. Across the street became black, and down the street, what was happening down the street? Early in the 50s, it was white. It's white down the street, and we didn't mix and mingle. I remember a kid in my class, Eugene. I think his last name was Galasio. He lived right down the street, but I saw him in school, but I didn't play with him. And it was integrated, but we grew in the when I was in third and fourth grade, we just kind of like went to school and came home, and we kind of like, it was just my sister and I. We didn't. It wasn't
like a big group of neighborhood kids that were hanging out.
No. It was just kind of like just the immediate family, and trying to think, and cousins. It was really cousins. It wasn't a lot of mix. The people across the street were very very weird. And
There's always one of those on the
yeah, they're very very weird. And we kind of like, education was like a big deal. We didn't talk about it, but basically when we had to make sure that we were on top of things with our education, and it wasn't like my mother had to constantly tell us. It was just like we knew we had to do. If the teacher gave us an assignment, it had to be done. And my mother never had to worry about us. Is she gonna fail a subject or not pass a grade? It wasn't like that at all. Everybody did well. Everyone. The four of us, after my brother graduated by the skin of his chin from high school, all the others, we did well.
Well, that was my second question about education, so I want to end on that. But right before we get to that, you said that in the 50s it was mostly white. By the 60s it starts becoming more black. Your neighborhood, is that right?
Yes.
You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Was there discussion about that in your
No,
house?
it was just like white flight. Like they would just leave. Like the kids that I was in third grade with, and they weren't there when I got to, a lot of them weren't there when I got to 8th grade. Jackson Street School was, K through 8. They weren't there. Like some of them I still miss. I went to my reunion, and I was asking, what happened to Barbara Burns, and so forth. And they moved, and she said Barbara moved to Deer Park, and Anne, I can't even remember Anne's last name, but she was another kid that I really cared for, and they moved out after after a couple years.
How did your parents discuss these changes?
Um, there wasn't like a big discussion. It was like mm, I don't know. It just didn't seem at the time. It just didn't seem to impact our life um, in a big way. I mean, we had our church. We had relatives. We had friends. Um, and we never really, when once school was out, we never like went to their homes. They come to my house, but I didn't go to their house.